A fitness tracker, a dead phone battery, and the most brutal murder Wisconsin had ever seen. What you're about to discover will change how you think about the technology in your pocket forever. On May 21, 2016, at around 1 p.m. in Bellevue, Wisconsin, 14-year-old Richard Vandahay was doing what farm kids do, picking stones with a bobcat on his grandfather's property. Hot Wisconsin afternoon, nothing unusual, until his 11-year-old friend called him over to some brush by the road. What they found, no one should ever witness, especially if he was a kid.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
We just found a human body laying in.
Okay. Person beyond help, or do I need to give you instructions for CPR?
No, it's not help. It's starting to decay.
Is it a male or a female?
It's long hair, but I didn't go near it.
That 911 call was about to expose a predator who thought he was smarter than modern technology. But here's what makes this case revolutionary. The digital evidence was so advanced, so precise, that it could track a killer's every movement, minute by minute, step by step, like having a video recording of an entire murder, except the cameras were in his own pocket. Before we dive into how technology caught this killer, you need to meet Nicole van der Eyden. Because Nicole wasn't just another victim. She was someone who could have been your sister, your friend, your neighbor. Nicole, everyone called her Nikki, was born on March 29, 1985, in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, to Steve and Vicky Meyer. She was 31 years old, a science teacher, and mother of 3 beautiful children. Her oldest 2, Michaela and Tyler, were from a previous relationship. And then there was 6-month-old baby Dylan, who she shared with Doug. Nikki graduated from Denmark High School in 2003, then went on to the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree, with a double major in Science and Education in 2010. For 6 years, she worked as a substitute teacher for the Green Bay area public school system, moving between elementary and middle schools since 2012. But like many of you watching, Nicole's life wasn't perfect. She'd been dating Doug Dietre for about a year, and their relationship was complicated. New baby, blended family, the usual stresses that test even the strongest couples. Now here's where this story takes its first dark turn, and you need to pay attention because what happens next shows how one innocent decision can change everything. Nicole decided she needed one night out. One night to feel like yourself again, to dance, to laugh, to forget about diapers and relationship drama. Just one night of fun with friends. She had no idea that decision would lead to her meeting pure evil. And that evil, he'd been watching, waiting, hunting in the shadows of Green Bay for months. On Friday night, May 20, 2016, Nicole and Doug get a babysitter, Dallas Kennedy, and head out to the watering hole in Green Bay. The plan? See Steel Panther, this hilarious glam rock parody band, then bar hop with friends. Simple, fun, and normal. And look, here they are at the concert. Happy, laughing, taking selfies. Everything seems perfect. But if you look closely at Doug's expression, there's something, a tension, because already cracks are starting to show. But as the night progressed, the same old tensions started bubbling up. Doug ran into some friends from high school he hadn't seen in years. You know how it is. Sometimes when you're catching up with old friends, everything else fades into the background. As Brown County Sheriff Sergeant Tracy Holschbach later explained, as the night progressed, they had been consuming alcohol, and Doug had run into some friends from high school that he had not seen in a while. The group decided to move venues, heading to the Sardine Can on South Broadway. This was where things started to unravel. Doug stayed behind at the watering hole with his friend Greg Mayhew, drinking and reminiscing about the old days. Nicole went ahead with everyone else, expecting Doug to follow, but he didn't. At 11:12 p.m., Nicole was getting angry. Really angry. Nicole's phone lights up with angry texts to Doug, and these messages, they paint a picture of what Nicole's final hours were really like. "So what beat you with?" Nicole texts. She's drunk, she's angry, she's seen Doug talking to another woman, and she's had enough. Doug's responses were, well, pretty typical guy responses. "Lol, stop. Be good, I'll see you at the sardine can." He honestly didn't seem to grasp how upset she was. Nicole fired back with, "Go talk to your horse," and called him abusive and controlling. She was convinced he was cheating on her. Now I need you to remember these text messages in this timeline, because Nicole's story is about to take its darkest turn. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from the sardine can shows Nicole trying to have fun, dancing with friends. But as the minutes tick by and Doug still hasn't shown up, you can see her getting more and more upset. At 12:30 a.m., Nicole's phone dies. Dead battery. In 2016, this was basically a death sentence for a night out. No GPS, no Uber app, no way to call for help. By 2:15 a.m., Doug finally leaves the watering hole. But it's too late. Nicole has already made the decision that will cost her everything. Surveillance shows Nicole leaving the sardine can alone, walking up the street, turning left at the corner. Her friends watched her go, worried but not panicked. They had no idea they were watching Nicole van der Heyden's final moments of freedom. Because half a mile away, at a bar called Richard Cranium's, a predator was waiting. Meet George Stephen Birch, 40 years old when he crossed paths with Nicole, and carrying secrets that his new Wisconsin friends knew nothing about. George Birch had moved from Virginia to Green Bay on March 1st, 2016, exactly 2 months and 20 days before Nicole's murder. The Jackson family had arranged for him to travel from Virginia to Wisconsin, giving him what they thought was a chance at a fresh start. Ed and Linda Jackson were good people, trying to help someone they thought was down on his luck. Ed Jackson later testified that Birch was on the outs with no place to go. They let him stay in an upstairs bedroom of their home for $100 a month rent. Ed even loaned Birch his red Chevy Blazer to get around. But what the Jacksons didn't know, what nobody in Green Bay knew, was that 20 years earlier, Birch had been involved in a shooting death in Virginia. A young man was killed during a fight outside Birch's apartment. 5 shots fired, 2 guns involved, witnesses everywhere. But here's the thing about Birch. He's smart, calculating. The kind of predator who studies his environment, learns from his mistakes, plans his next move. The prosecution couldn't prove he pulled the trigger. He was acquitted, but the shadow of violence followed him wherever he went. In Green Bay, Birch was staying with the Jackson family, renting a room for $100 a month, driving their red Chevy Blazer. He was falling behind on rent, spending most nights drinking alone at downtown bars. His favorite spot? Richard Cranium's, half a mile from the sardine can. Now here's what's chilling. While Nicole was fighting with Doug and getting angrier by the minute, Birch was sitting at Richard Cranium's, watching the crowd, hunting for the logo. What happened when Nicole walked into his bar is going to shock you. But what's even more disturbing is how he saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. Nicole, drunk and vulnerable, wandered into Richard Cranium's around 2:30 a.m. She was angry, hurt, looking for someone to listen. Birch saw exactly what he'd been waiting for. According to what investigators would later piece together, he and Nicole struck up a conversation about their relationship problems. 2 strangers bonding over personal drama. Nicole had no idea she was talking to a killer, and Birch had no idea that his actions that night would leave a trail that investigators could follow. What happened between 2:30 a.m. and 4 a.m. was brutal, so savage that even seasoned investigators struggled to put it into words. This is Nicole's story, and it deserves to be told exactly as it happened. Somehow, Birch convinced Nicole to leave Richard Cranium's with him. Maybe he offered her a ride home. Maybe he said he understood what she was going through with Doug. We'll never know exactly what he said, but Nicole trusted him enough to get in his car. They drove to Nicole's house in his borrowed red Blazer. Think about this for a moment. Nicole's 6-month-old baby Dylan was sleeping inside with the babysitter, safe and unaware that his mother was fighting for her life just outside. For nearly an hour, something unspeakable was happening in front of that house. Something that would destroy not just Nicole's life, but the lives of everyone who loved her. Nicole suffered 241 separate injuries to her body. Let me say that again. 241 injuries. She was strangled with a cord. She was beaten so severely she was unrecognizable. But here's what you need to know about Nicole. She fought. She fought with everything she had. She fought for her life, for her children, for every moment she could get. The evidence showed just how hard Nicole struggled. Her clothes were found turned inside out, scattered along Highway 172. Blood, hair, dirt, all evidence of her desperate fight for survival. After he killed her, Birch drove Nicole's body to a remote field in Bellevue and dumped her there like she was nothing. Then he scattered her clothes along the highway. At 4:22 a.m., he was back home, probably thinking he'd gotten away with it. But Nicole's story wasn't over. Even in death, she was about to help catch her own killer. Saturday afternoon, Doug Dietrich walked into the Ledgeview police station to report Nicole missing. He'd spent the morning calling everyone he could think of, friends, family, anyone who might know where Nicole was. He had no idea that just 3 hours earlier, 2 young boys had found Nicole's body in that farmer's field. Within hours of reporting her missing, Doug was the suspect. From the police perspective, it made perfect sense. Boyfriend and girlfriend have a big fight. She goes missing. There's blood evidence in their house and garage. The statistics don't lie. In cases like this, it's almost always someone close to the victim. Doug was arrested and held on $1 million bond. The local media ran with the story. Teacher murdered by her boyfriend after a night of drinking and fighting. Everyone thought the case was solved. Nicole's family was devastated. Not only had they lost Nicole, but now they were being told that the father of her baby was her killer. But Doug had been wearing something that night that nobody paid much attention to at first. Something that was about to change everything. A fitness tracker. Just a simple device that millions of people wear every day to count their steps and monitor their sleep. When investigators finally looked at Doug's Fitbit data, they found something that shattered their entire theory of the case. During the exact time Nicole was being murdered, between 3:10 and 6:10 a.m., Doug's Fitbit recorded only 12 steps. 12 steps! Rolling over in bed, getting up to check on baby Dylan, normal sleep movement. Doug Dietrich had been asleep at home while Nicole was dying 3 miles away. The same technology that people use to track their daily exercise had just saved an innocent man from a murder conviction. When Doug was released, the relief was overwhelming, but it also meant something terrifying. Doug didn't kill Nicole. Then who did? And were they still out there? Nicole's case was about to go cold. Her family was left wondering if they'd ever get justice. Her children were left without answers. For 3 months, investigators had nothing. No suspects, no leads, just a brutal murder and a community living in fear. Then the crime lab called with news that would break the case wide open. They'd managed to extract DNA from one of Nicole's socks and run it through the national database. They got a match. George Stephen Birch, a man nobody in Green Bay had ever heard of. But when investigators ran his name through their local database, they discovered something incredible that would give them everything they needed to catch Nicole's killer. Here's where this case takes an unbelievable turn. When detectives looked into George Birch, they found out he'd been involved in a minor hit-and-run accident just weeks after Nicole's murder. To prove his innocence in that completely unrelated case, Birch had voluntarily given his smartphone to the Green Bay police. They'd copied everything on it, every photo, every text, every piece of data, and given the phone back to him. So when Brown County investigators came calling about Nicole's murder, Green Bay police already had a complete copy of Birch's phone from just 3 weeks after the crime. What they found on that phone was a prosecutor's dream and a killer's worst nightmare. The Google data from Birch's phone created a minute-by-minute timeline of murder. Every location, every movement, every stop. All recorded automatically by his smartphone's GPS. Watch this. Birch leaves Richard Cranium's at 2:30 a.m., drives directly to Nicole's house, stays there for nearly an hour, then goes to the field where her body was found, then to Highway 172 where her clothes were dumped, then home at 4:22 a.m. It was like having a video recording of the entire crime, except the camera was in the killer's own pocket. Sergeant Rick Lopnau's reaction when he saw this data says it all. It was very obvious that here's our guy. It's a huge piece of evidence, obviously. Think about this for a moment. In 2016, this level of digital tracking was cutting edge. Today, every smartphone does this automatically. Every criminal carrying a phone is essentially carrying their own surveillance system. But the GPS data was just the beginning. Cell tower pings confirmed Birch's location at every crucial moment. The phone data was so precise, investigators could track him down to specific intersections, specific buildings, specific timeframes measured in minutes. This wasn't just one piece of technology catching a killer. This was an entire ecosystem of digital evidence working together. Smartphones, GPS satellites, cell towers, DNA databases, all serving justice. On September 7, 2016, George Stephen Birch was arrested for the murder of Nicole van der Heijden. The digital evidence against him was overwhelming. But what happened next would test just how far a killer would go to escape justice. When investigators confronted Birch with the evidence, his reaction revealed everything about the power of modern technology in criminal justice. Faced with GPS data that tracked his every movement, DNA evidence that placed him at the scene, and a digital timeline that destroyed any possible alibi, Birch was cornered. But instead of confessing, he did something that shows the true desperation of a caught predator. He tried to blame the innocent man who'd already been cleared by technology. At trial, Birch claimed that he and Nicole had consensual sex in his car, and that Doug Dietrich had discovered them, killed Nicole, and forced Birch at gunpoint to help dispose of the body. The audacity was breathtaking. He was literally claiming that the man whose Fitbit had proved his innocence was actually the mastermind behind the murder. Prosecutor David Lacey destroyed Birch's story piece by piece. So Nicole would rather have sex with you in front of her neighbor's home with your butt hanging out of the door of the car than ask the babysitter to go home, he asked. Birch's weak response: "Sir, I don't know, I wasn't the one making decisions." But the technology didn't lie. The Fitbit data proved Doug was asleep. The GPS data proved Birch was lying. The DNA evidence was overwhelming. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury reached their verdict. Guilty. First-degree intentional homicide. Nicole's family finally had justice. Doug Dietrich, completely vindicated, could begin to heal from the nightmare of being suspected of murdering the woman he loved. Judge John Zukowski's words at sentencing captured the brutality of Nicole's murder. "Mr. Birch, this is a crime that would, I believe, merit the death penalty. And for that, you have to die in prison. Life without parole. George Stephen Birch will never see freedom again." Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if Nicole's story affected you the way it affected me, make sure to subscribe for more cases where justice finds a way, even in the darkest circumstances.